Yo, what's going on, guys? Sekapoko here, bringing you another 7 Lessons Grand Cross video. This will be going over the tier list for October, and we'll be going over the different facets of units in PvP and PvE, of course, for the 7 Lessons Grand Cross.gg website. So check it out, and hopefully you guys enjoy. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so first off, in the tier list, we're going to be going over different kinds of tiers first, so you can read the tiers. The first off is the D tier. These units have very little use in general in the game. The C tier here, characters that really are somewhat usable or potentially usable, but not really usable at all. You can use them in Training Cave, you can use them in other areas, but not super a lot. D characters you can use in the Training Cave. Like any unit that you can use in the Training Cave does not really factor in the tier list because that's basically every single unit in the game can be used in the Training Cave. But these characters are characters that are good passive boosters, units that can be in the back line, but not as good on the front line. They're characters that could potentially be not great on the front line in general. There's a lot of issues with these characters, and you can't really use them as effectively as other units. Now, B tier characters. Alright, now B tier characters that we have on this list, of course, are going to be a little different. They're characters that are very good in raid bosses, characters that are like top tier units in other facets in PvE, and this is just specifically, that's where they kind of cap out, and they don't really go beyond that in PvE situations. For PvP characters, and not really PvE characters, these characters are kind of supporting characters, or not really as good. They're kind of memey, and you can use them, etc. And that's what this whole B tier is. So if you're wondering what the B tier is, these are characters that are usable, but not really top tier, unless it's in a raid situation, then potentially good for one set of content, but not good for more than that. So that's basically everything that's in this B tier. In the A tier, these are units that are the top tier in the field, or units that are very good in PvP, but not necessarily top tier PvP units, and they can be used very effectively there. S tier units are exceptional units in PvP or in PvP, so you can actually see how good they are in multiple situations, or they're so good in PvP that they are like the top tier, but they're not quite the best units in the game. And SS tier units are legitimately the best units in the game. They can use these units everywhere, and they're phenomenal on almost every set of content in the game, and that's why they remain in the SS tier. So we're going to be going over some of the characters, because there are some changes this time around that I'm going to be going over, and what's some of these that have dropped down. Now the C tier has remained exactly the same as the last time around for September, as well as the D tier, so there's no major changes there. The other characters that got changed in, there were some characters that dropped down to the A tier, as well as some characters that moved up to the A tier. So first off, for characters that dropped down to the A tier, the first one is going to be Ssr Aaron, and the reason Ssr Aaron is moving down is Las Vegas here, and let's be reasonable. If you try to use Ssr Aaron right now in PvP, you're probably going to get slapped around like a little chew toy. But you could potentially use him, but let's be honest, he is a little out of place in these situations. Using a transforming unit like Aaron in PvP is not really relevant to this current meta, and you can't really use it there. For PvE situations, there are potentials where you can use this unit, and an Escanor style ability is always nice. However, not nearly as much as using the actual version of Escanor for PvE, so it would probably be better just to use Escanor instead of using Transforming Aaron. There's not a huge amount of viability for that character, so just know that unless you have him like 6 out of 6 ultimate, you're really not getting a ton out of it. Alright, next character that moved down, of course, is going to be Levi, and this is going to be not including the crit week that's happening right now. This is just because Levi is lost a lot of his luster as far as what you can use with him. Las Vegas Meliodas is just a better unit. You can't really use Levi in ungeared PvP. You can use Levi in Crimson Demons. He's an exceptional use for that, but not nearly as much as using, say, Las Vegas Meliodas. Personally, I think using Las Vegas Meliodas in a Hell Crimson situation is much better than using a Levi. After using the two and using them consistently, I've found that Las Vegas is a little bit more consistent and a little bit easier to use because free rank ups on his cards, a lot more. You get a similar amount of lifesteal. You already have the UR gear for him, so it's a little bit easier. In general, like, unless you pull the UR set and use the UR set for Levi, it's really not going to be great. And those are the changes to those tiers. Now the last thing on the tiers, of course, that for the changes for characters moving up and down from B tier and A tier is going to be the Green Deanne is going to be moving up to the A tier, as she should, because with the new Fraudrin comp that's now here, you could actually run that and do pretty well in PvP by using Green Deanne, Green Fraudrin, and Las Vegas Meliodas with a Green Merlin or whatnot. And you can get a large amount of damage off on that team and get your ultimates off. So it's a pretty nice team, and the team is very high CC anyway, so you typically go first, so you have a very large chance of doing working well. So let's go over the new units that got added to all three tiers real quick. First off, we got Green Gloccidia. So when his potential release comes out, he will be in the C tier. Green Gloccidia, unless he gets a massive rework, is not a great unit. He is one of the worst units in the game, in my opinion. And if you didn't know what he does, he has a bleed card, and he's really bad. He's really bad. I've tried making him work, and it just never works. Zaratroth is a top tier PvE unit. He's a great unit in Grey Demon and a great unit in some guild boss situations. I haven't tried him fully in guild boss all the time, but I've definitely seen some positives there. The other thing that he's really good for is going to be the final boss Deanne fight. He's a primo unit for that, for high DPS. So just know that Zaratroth is an exceptional PvE unit and better than Green King for the fight that Green King is for. So if you're looking for between the two units, if you got them both to level 60 and you ended up getting a Zaratroth, or a newer player and you have a Zaratroth at some point, you're not sure between Green King and Zaratroth which to build, Zaratroth is a far superior unit as far as damage goes. However, for cosmetics and other things, Green King is going to have more cosmetics, and potentially you are geared from your Blue King, so there is that as well. So just take that in consideration. But what I have seen is Zaratroth with an SSR set out damages a Green King with a UR set / SSR set. So it's kind of interesting to see that the Zaratroth is very, very good for that fight. Other unit that came out, of course, is going to be Red Elaine here. Halloween Elaine that's going to be here. Halloween Elaine, of course, is a great unit that you can see. She is a very good boosting unit for blue characters, and she's always going to be on the same tier as basically Gil Thunder as far as between units. You're sometimes she's going to be worse than Gil Thunder, sometimes she'll be best than Gil Thunder, but she'll be here as far as around the same power level as Gil Thunder, just less viable in PvP. That's why Gil Thunder is arguably better. For the Valentine units, we all ended up putting all three of them into this bin, into the B tier. We put Jenna, Zaneri, as well as Elaine in the B tier because they are the best units to use for demons if you do have them, because the amount of drops you get out of them is exceptional. Elaine, of course, boosts area the most as a unit, creatable unit for that. Zaneri is probably the worst of the three as far as usable units. So Zaneri is probably the worst as far as usable, but she's a unique ultimate, and it's really cool. I haven't seen anybody fully max out a UR Zaneri, and that's weird to do anyway. So whatever. But Jenna is one of the best characters you can work for Hell Demon because the instant stance removal and all the damage you do there allows you to auto Hell very easily. So there is some major positives to using her. Alright, now back in the A tier, we're adding Easton, of course. Easton provisional ranking right now is going to be in the A tier. She's a great unit to use for the Red Demon, as well as a decent unit in PvP. She has an okay power level, and she gets a little bit better with Super Awakening because of how her kit works. So just know that Super Awakening does affect this character a little bit better. But overall, that's where she kind of lies. Now the other unit, going into the S tier and going into the units that changed here. The units that changed for the S tier are basically Derriere got moved down, down into the S tier from the SS tier. And I'll go over that in a little bit, don't worry. And then that move down from the S tier into the A tier is Helbram. Now, the reason Helbram has moved down to the A tier versus an SS tier or an S tier unit for PvP situations and PvE situations is Helbram is not really used in any type of PvE situation anymore. The last time we did use him, of course, was Final Boss Merlin, and that was the last time he was really, really viable in PvE. However, you can use him in Trainee Cave, and you can use him there, but for Crimson Demon, not really an optimal unit or a great unit to use there. And in PvP, he's definitely seen better days. Ultimate rushes from Lost May Meliodas make it so that the thing with Helbram is you're always losing on combat class. His raw HP values, stat values, etc. are very low in comparison to other units, and he makes up for it with a 20% stat boost that he does get. But because he does have to make up for it, he doesn't have a large amount of combat class, and then you typically go second with Helbram compositions. So my thought on Helbram is that he's kind of seen better days, and he's really kind of outdated. As far as going forward, though, you can use him. Once Goddess Elizabeth gets here and some other characters get here, he starts falling off even further. And then when the King gets here, he's dead. He is a bad unit at that point. With you're using the new King, you literally just walk through him, and it's nuts how bad it is. All right. And as far as the other characters that got added to the A tier, as far as unreleased units goes, let's go to the first, and then we'll go over Derry, so don't freak out. We're gonna go over the other 2 units that got added in. Red Gloccidia is an exceptional unit. Really interesting to see what he can do in situations. I'm very impressed with the damage that I saw from him from my PvP showcase in ungeared PvP, and I'm kind of curious to see what a Red Gloccidia can do in PvP situations and geared PvP, as well as what other people could do with him in PvE situations because of the way his ultimate works. So with the new ignite stacks that you can get up on enemies, with the way you can get to the kind of amplify style damage on this character, I'm very interested to see more about how Gloccidia can ramp his damage and do very, very, very well. So I was very impressed with it, and it's super nice to see. Next up, we got Zeldris. Of course, Blue Zeldris on release is not the greatest unit in Zaratroth because he does have only a 60% chance to crit on enemies, and not having a lower chance to crit on enemies, of course, makes it so that he doesn't crit, and that when he doesn't crit, you literally feel like a wet blanket. So you definitely need to crit on Zeldris for him to feel the power. So using a character like Death Pierce with him, or potentially in the future Ludocio, will give you a little bit better chance to crit, and of course a much better time using him. So those are the characters that got added into the game, as well as the characters that were added to the tier list. And lastly, of course, let's go over Zaneri and why she is moved down, because there's going to be people rioting, and I just wanted to go over it. Okay, so Zaneri. Why did Zaneri move down a tier? So we did extensive testing on this unit, and what we were going into, we were talking about PvP situations and ungeared PvP. In geared PvP, we saw some really cool things week to week. Sometimes he was insanely good, sometimes he was insanely bad. It really just depends on the week and exactly what you would get out of it. On a crit week, of course, it's really kind of weird to test on this unit. So what we did was extensive testing in ungeared PvP. Now in ungeared PvP, she had some great potential, super high damage, and was able to kill units very quickly. Whether you went first or second, you were in a good position with different units on your team composition for ultimate rush teams, and there was no like damage rush team you could run her on because you need to use a buff first and then her attack, and the buff first and then her attack does not provide enough damage in order to kill someone in one turn on ungeared PvP. But in geared PvP, you can't. In ungeared PvP, you can actually use a character like this in order to use an ultimate rush on her and protect her ultimate. But you have the unfortunate part about this character is if you do ultimate rush with this character, you're in a bit of a pickle as far as how you can do your damage. So I did find that this unit is a little bit less consistent with the current meta in ungeared PvP, and the current meta is going to last for quite some time, so I felt like she deserved to move down a tier for just PvP. For PvE situations, you really don't use her in Season 3 Guild Boss, which will be coming out soon, and you won't be using her for Final Boss Diane. So as far as overall PvE viability for the next few months, I don't really see a ton of viability for Zaneri for future content that is releasing, and for current content that's going to be releasing right now. She's usable in Guild Boss and Hell Crimson Demon, and is slightly good is very good in PvP, but not as good as I would say Escanor is, because Escanor, as you can see, as in many people's team compositions, can do very, very, very well. Red Escanor is very good for mono red. For green Escanor is really good for Pierce compositions, as well as crit compositions that you can use. Yeah, he's also good for ulti rush composition still. Like, a lot of people can still use ulti rush, which is really crazy. The other thing that you can use, of course, is you have red Gother, much better unit to shut out a lot of units. As far as damage goes, of course, Zaneri is better. But when we were doing the testing, there were so many failings with Zaneri, and we tested about 10 different teams over about 50 matches of PvP, and the Zaneri teams we tried was about 30 matches of those, and we tried it with Ssr Aaron, tried it with Blue King, we tried it with Merlin, Red Merlin. There's a bunch of different compositions we tried it with, and what we found is that the power level of Zaneri, while it's great, is not really good for the current meta, because of how it works. So that's why she's dropped down a tier, not because she got worse, it's because of that specific. Now if you want to use Zaneri in PvP, she's exceptional. Really good unit, top tier unit for PvP. And that's why she's in the S tier. And even in the S tier, the SS tier, that's a top tier unit. As you can see where the power level of Blue Demon Meliodas is. And the power of Pierce right now on Global is still exceptionally strong. So just know that yes, she is still a top tier unit. S tier and SS tier are very, very close together. The difference in between them is pretty minor, but you can clearly see the difference if you look hard enough. The last unit's going to be coming out, of course, that will come out in the future will be Red Zeldris. And Red Zeldris will land in the SS tier when he does drop. As far as overall unit viability goes, this is the viability of these current units in the current meta, and that's where they are lying right now as far as an objective standpoint. I really like Ssr Aaron, I want her to be SS tier, and I want her to go up, but as far as the overall feelings from many votes in chat, we did about 3 or 4 votes as far as for Ssr Aaron, she moved down a tier for sure. There was no like wishy-washy should move down, but she definitely should move down because of where her viability lies for the next few months, as well as her viability is now. So I'm hoping that we're gonna get more content with her for her coming out soon, and the tower comes out so we can bump her tier or something like that. But right now, for the few months, she's gonna boop down. And the thing with tier lists, of course, the units move up and down all the time, so it really just depends on the month and the week and what's coming, as well as what is right here. Alright guys, well, my name is Poco. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did enjoy the video, of course, like and subscribe, all the fun stuff, and you guys have a great rest of your day.